Well, hello. I thought I'd give this natural lighting another round since get out of the basement with PowerPoint and try to do some content again with the iPad outdoors. It's the end of August, and Chicagoland area has been my home for my entire life. I guess I'm biased in it, but we have some of the most changeable weather around, and I think that's due to that big, beautiful lake that we have. So it provides us with wonderful water and place to go for recreation, and I think it does a lot to enhance our weather. If it's too hot, it'll change. If it's too cold, it'll change, and the lake seems to temper the highs and the lows. I know people would say Chicago's pretty cold, but I do enjoy all the seasons here. We do have probably the worst kleptocracy and one-party system, so our politics isn't very good, in my opinion. But I wouldn't give up the area for anything. What I thought I'd talk about a little bit today is, thinking about the idea of, what's interesting, and get to be an older person. Maybe you don't have a lot of new things that are interesting. I look back upon the times of my grandfather. He lived right two doors down, and I spent quite a bit of time with him. I was always interested in hearing some of his stories, so I thought maybe I'd try a small story in basically the real life history of my family. My maternal grandmother lived with us. We had a home in Chicago with related living, and she lived downstairs with my uncle. It was related living in the sense that it had a entryway that was indoors, so you could come up and go down inside the home between the two apartments, if you want to call it that. Now, for us kids, to descend the stairway was verboten, but for my grandma, she was up all the time. I'm sure now, looking back upon it, it was a great joy for her to be able to have the extended family and be involved in our family. So she told me a story about, you ask your elders, how did we get here? How is it that we're in Chicago and living here? And how did it start? And she told the story of her mother, which would be my great grandma, Wilhelmina. And now in today's world, I know a number of my grandchildren still have some great grandmas, Gigi's. There's a lot of Gigi's around, but I think that's a tribute to our modern medicine that people are living longer. I didn't know my Gigi because she had passed long before I was born. But she was born in the last part of the 1800s in the 19th century, and Germany, or what was then a state that later became part of the United German States. And when she was very young, not even a year old, her mother died. And this is the story that my grandma told, that I assume she had heard from her mother. Her father then married another woman, a stepmom, but unfortunately, not too long of a time, he also died. And the stepmother was in a position that she couldn't take care, and so Wilhelmina was, in fact, put into an orphanage, which was a Roman Catholic institution run by nuns. And there, basically, she was raised until she was around 14-ish, about time to age out. And a family came, and not to adopt her, but to, in fact, have her come and maybe be what we would describe as an in-service person for the woman of the house, to comb her hair, help her get dressed, help her with household chores and things of that nature. So, in fact, this family, she went to live with them. And They were the Gertz family. And for a while, they lived in that nature. But it was a time in the world when the Kaiser and Bismarck and the politicians of the day were, of course, forming a united Germany by force. And they had come up with the idea of conscription, or the draft. And males of draft age, males of age military age, had to do their time in the service. Well, the parents felt that before their boys were in fact required to do that, that it would be a good idea to leave there and to migrate to the United States. And so they offered Wilhelmina that she would come with them and use the name Gertz as if she were their daughter, and thereby gain entry into the United States, which she did. And they came to Chicagoland area, and it gets a little foggy after that, but she met Caspar Fell, and they got married, and there didn't seem to be any idea what happened to the Gertz family. So that was the story that we lived with. My mother had heard, my grandmother, and God rest their souls, they passed away, that was the story. Well, if we fast forward to current times, and my sister, one of my sisters, doing, I think she got it as a Christmas present, where you spit in the tube and send it off for a DNA test, and they come back with a lot of information about your roots and background and so on and so forth. And evidently, it contains also, a list of people whom you may have a close DNA match to. And she discovers in that list a gentleman with the last name of Gertz, who I believe lived up in Milwaukee, so not that far away. So she contacted him, and in fact, in discussion with him, he described a old family tale, again, a whisper rather than a shout, of his great-great-grandfather, I believe it was, having a child out of wedlock before he had met great-great-grandma. And in fact, that child had been in an orphanage, and that in fact she had come to live with them as a half-sister or step-sister, and had come to the United States with them because she belonged to the family. So I guess, I don't know what to think, but I guess there would be a good reason to tell the story the way Wilhelmina told it. In those times, of course, being a child from an orphanage and adopted, and basically being a bastard child, wouldn't have done something you'd want known, and you're basically part Jewish, because it's a Jewish family, the Gertz. So there were reasons probably that that story might have went better, or maybe her story was in fact the truth, and what we've learned recently wasn't. But my moral to that story is that if you're going to do a DNA test and find out things about your history, you may want to be prepared that maybe everything isn't as you thought it was. So be careful out there. So if you like that little story, basically historical fact, like or subscribe. I've got a lot more of these stories, believe it or not. So thank you for listening.